Heroes and Villains, Metro's latest album, listening to it a couple times now, and I just want to put together a video or a little bit of an analysis video on Metro's drums and the bounce that Metro Boomin gets in his tracks. So I just want to break it down a little bit to sort of help you get that Metro bounce, you know, what things should be louder, what things should be quieter, how things should be panned, how to get a wider drum sound. So if you're interested in that, stick around. This right here is sort of a drum section sort of built off of the Superheroes track number 2 off of Heroes and Villains with Future. And just a couple interesting things here that I noticed Metro was doing on his drums that I noticed, you know, quite a bit throughout the entire album. First off, don't be scared about dropping the tempo below 120 beats per minute for trap beats and still sticking to that halftime type of sound. It still works, it's just a slower, more scarier type of sound that Metro goes for. So the tempo here is 117 beats per minute, and this is the section or drum pattern that we're gonna be breaking down. All right, so starting off as sort of like a general thought behind it all, keep things simple. Don't overcomplicate things when you're trying to go for this bounce. You know, there's a lot of songs that you hear with a lot of crazy rolls, note repeats, things happening all over the place. Not with the Metro bounce. It keeps things simple and really leaves a lot of space for the vocals. So we're going to start off with the snare and just point out a couple interesting things that I've sort of came to realize about Metro's snares. So go ahead and solo this out over here. So usually snares happen on the 3s when you're playing that halftime trap style. The same thing goes here for Metro beats, but he doesn't really sway too much from that. Once again, it's very sort of a simple pattern, but he does throw in a couple of these sort of rhythm things that sort of changes up the pattern a bit. So that right there gives a little bit of a bounce to it. You know, it's nothing too crazy or too wild, but it's just a little note in there that sort of keeps the listeners interested than sort of an otherwise monotonous snare happening on every single 3 count. But the interesting thing here, what Metro does a lot in his tracks, is what happens at the end of a pattern. So in this case, the pattern is an 8-bar pattern. And at the end, what I found Metro does is he takes out that snare from the last measure. And what that does is it creates tension and build up about what's going to happen in the bar that's upcoming. So over here on the second part of this arrangement, right, the snare is just playing along. Snare is cut out. Snare is cut out and it creates that tension and like what's going to happen in the next section, right? It's taking you on that journey. If we go ahead and bring that snare in, I'm just going to go ahead and draw that in, you don't get that same effect. Right? You're just not getting that sort of what's about to happen type of thing when that really fundamental piece of the drum pattern is removed. So Metro does that a lot, and if you're looking to create that tension and what's about to happen in your beat, creating that storyline, just drop out the snare. Really simple yet effective trick to do just that. Next up, we got the hi-hats. Once again, very simple over here, nothing too crazy. We have a couple of rolls here and there, but nothing to write home about. So you're basically building off of that 2-step pattern with a couple of 16th rolls every so often. And the same thing Metro does with the snare. He sort of takes it out at the latter half of that bar to once again create that tension about what's about to happen in the next measure. All right, so it's playing along, and cuts right out. Now, Metro's open hats, this is what I found he does a lot in his tracks. So for one, the open hat sort of acts like a crash, and it's happening on the ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And what's interesting about it is that he takes that open hat and places it way far on the left channel to start opening up that drum section, making it a lot wider. And once again, drops it out on the last section to build that tension. Right, you're riding along, and oh, he takes it out. What's about to happen? Another thing I noticed about the open hats is that they're very, very quiet and in the background. So if I open up my sampler over here, I like to adjust my gain from here rather than lowering the fader. I just like dropped to minus 24 dBs. Otherwise, if it was really loud, right, those open hats can really be overpowering. Metro likes to keep them nice, quiet, and in the background. But they're still there to give you that sort of ride pattern. Now, for the 808s, you got to have those dark, long sounding 808s. So nothing that's super distorted. The patterns are usually more simple as well. They're not going up and down the scale like crazy. They're usually hitting at the root note of the scale that the track is in. And at the end of the bar, once again, to say, hey, something is about to happen, something's about to change in the track, he typically likes to bring his 808s down the scale to build up for that next section rather than going up. This is just something I found. What's really interesting about the 808s, and I really want to point it out, is the length of the 808s. Metro really likes to control how long his 808s are. In this case, you see the 808s here, they're not ringing out fully all the time. Right? They play and then stop. They stop and they go, and it's really giving you that bounce that you want for those Metro beats. So if I go ahead and stretch this out all together, let me play it out with all this stuff. Right, that can get boring if every 808 is stretched out long. Let's go ahead and pull that back a bit. Right, it gives you a nice stop and go effect. But what's really cool about that effect is that he plays off of the kick that he puts in his pattern. So every time that 808 cuts like that, the kick is going to be right there to play. Right, and it really gives a cool bounce. Otherwise, if the 808s was all long, that 808 that he wants to emphasize is going to get cut out completely. Right? Just not the same effect as this. Now, if you are using Logic, the way you control the length of your 808 is simply changing your mode to classic. And when you change it over to classic, went from the default one shot, it allows you to pick how long you want that 808 to go. Now for the kick, well, like I said, it really plays off of the 808. Not every 808 is going to get a kick on top of it. He usually uses those kicks just to emphasize certain parts in the pattern, and that's what's going to give it that bounce. He likes to put a sort of a kick right before a big 808's about to happen, like here. So next up we have the vocal chants, and it's not a Metro beat without any vocal chants. And for this one, I sort of tried to mimic the Superheroes pattern. So we have 3 different chants on this one here. So a couple interesting things that I sort of found out about the way he uses vocal chants and how he applies them in the drum section. So for one, I noticed that a lot of Metro's vocal chants are really muffled out. He basically just puts a filter on them just to take out a lot of the high frequencies so that they're just a little bit darker sounding, right? So for this chant over here, it's been taken quite a bit out from the highs. Right? That just takes up more space, and Metro likes to leave a lot of space on the high end for the hi-hats and other sort of sparkly bell stuff. So he takes all that stuff out to give it a nice dark sound for those chants. Also, this chant over here, the classic Metro chant, right? I noticed in a lot of his tracks, he takes that chant and pushes it to the far right. And we have the open hat over here on the left, far left, and now we have this chant on the far right, and it's really opening up that drum kit as far as the width of the drum section. So you don't always just have to put like a stereo widener on your drums to make it sound wide. Start placing your drums in different parts of the left and right spectrum, and your drums will start to sound a whole lot wider. And then we have the snare rolls that Metro loves to use. Nothing too crazy here. It sounds crazy, but it's not. This is what it kind of looks like. It's just playing with the notes available in the scale, except you're pitching that snare sound. So this snare sound is usually sounds like that, but Metro likes to pitch his snares. And he just rolls that snares down the scale, and then usually at the end of that section, he has that roll really set to really fast. So in this case, it's a 64th roll. And lastly, Metro loves to just sort of place random sound effects and perks throughout his section. Right over here, I sort of noticed the Goosebumps perk sound in the Superheroes song, so I went ahead and just added it here as well. Right, so he just places this random sound effects in his patterns and just adds to that Metro bounce. Right, if you don't have that, it's going to sound the same as the first 4 bars, and Metro likes to create some changes in his patterns just to keep the listener interested and keep listening to the track. Now, what I noticed about his levels of his drum sounds is this. Metro loves to have his snares, his hi-hats, and his 808s and kick sit on top of everything else. So the 808, the kick, the hi-hat, and the snare is going to be the loudest thing in the rhythm section. Right, so it's going to be really loud, and everything else is going to work around it. That's coming down the middle, by the way, all those pieces. Then you start to bring in the open hat, push to the far left, and quiet. Right, your chants are placed a little bit all over the field, but this one specifically, that classic Metro chant, placed over to the right. Right, then you're bringing the other chants. It's really starting to opening up the width of this pattern. The hi-hats, I should mention, he likes to place them a little bit to the right. And for these snares over here, I noticed for the rolls especially, he likes to put on a chorus, or at least what I'm gathering from what I'm listening to, a chorus sound on the snares just to sound a little bit wider that way as well. There is sort of how you get that Metro Boomin bounce. I know I talked quite a bit, but hopefully you picked up a few pointers along the way. But if you do have any questions on this or just want to chat, let's go and talk in the comment section below. If you do have any Metro bounce tips that you want to share with the community as well, let us know down below. How about everybody if you want to? But other than that, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something new this one, and we'll catch you on the next one. Later. Peace.